want to show north to the top of the page, wherever possible. We can just about make it fit, but in addition to the plan, the walls, the doors, the floor pattern, we show the overall dimensions and a few of the intermediate dimensions, like the major breaks where the walls break, we show those dimensions, right? So then after that, we make sure we have enough space also for the title of the drawing. So you have a bubble, and the bubble usually has a numerator and a denominator. The top number is the number of the drawing on the sheet. The bottom number is the sheet number. This is sheet number 3 in our set of 12 drawings, right? So therefore this drawing number is 3. Therefore this floor plan, which we call survey floor plan, room 303, has a bubble that says drawing number 1 on sheet 3, denominator. Another drawing that we're going to have is a large scale blow up detail of the door jamb. We've measured that at a larger scale. We've drawn that up at a larger scale. We're going to show it on the sheet at a larger scale as well. So that is the detail reference symbol. You show that, you call that drawing number 2 on sheet 3, and that's the title of that drawing. Drawing number 2 on sheet 3 is the jamb detail. We give it its own scale, larger scale, different than the main plan, which is 1/2 inch to the foot scale. This is 3 inches equals a foot scale. You have the option to draw it even larger if you like. You can draw it at half full scale if you have enough space. In other words, instead of it being this tiny little space, which is basically 1.5 inches wide, if you did it at a half full scale, or 6 inches equals a foot scale, you can make it be 3 inches wide, and you still have room for that, and you would have more detail. You can draw it more clearly. That's the purpose of larger scale detail. So we have those 2 drawings on there. We also will show, in addition to writing the scale under the title, you can read in the book how a lot of these titles are arranged, but it's the drawing number, drawing name at generally 1/4 inch high letters. And then underneath it, your written scale that says scale, 1/2 inch equals a foot scale. But in addition to writing the scale, we have a graphic scale. Remember why we had the graphic scale? Got it? And that is because, Allie, remember why I have a graphic scale?
Scale?
Yes, it's visual. It gives you a cue as to how big is a foot, really. I mean, here it tells you that a 1/2 inch equals a foot, but you don't know until you see graphically, oh, there's 0, 1, 2, 4, 8. That's an 8-foot long segment. Every 1/2 inch represents a foot. Also, it helps you when you blow this down and you reduce it in size, send it to somebody by email or a fax, and what they get is a drawing like this on an 8.5 by 11 inch piece of paper, not the original size. It's no longer accurate, no longer true that it's a 1/2 inch equals a foot scale, but your graphic scale would tell them how big it actually is. They can just measure how big is a foot, put their scale on 8 foot, and see what scale fits 8 feet. It might wind up being 1/8 of an inch equals a foot scale, or 1/16 of an inch equals a foot scale. So you always want to have a graphic scale with your plans. And we also show a north arrow, right? Do you guys remember why we have a north arrow on the plan? Well, do you remember?
To show the actual difference between the real north direction and the actual on the plan. The
Right,
drawing.
exactly. Several reasons to have a north arrow. One is to call out the cardinal points of the rooms. You can refer to this as the north wall, this as the east wall, this as the west wall, this as the south wall, and you have some nomenclature that you can communicate with. For design purposes, it lets you know how the light comes into the room. What kind of light does this room get? This room gets south light then, right? Which means in the middle of the afternoon, the sun is coming in strong through these windows. So if you're designing with an idea towards light, you want to know where north is. Generally, we put north to the top of the page. And what Ronka is referring to about the difference between Plan North and True North is that while we're going to call this wall here the north wall, because in Manhattan our grid generally runs north-south, this is north, but in reality, True North is 30 degrees off of Plan North, right? So we can draw a second arrow that tells us what True North is. You know, an arrow is, you know, about 30 degrees off of Plan North. Generally, we'll work with Plan North, and that'll set it up, okay? The other thing that the drawing has, we've pochade these walls. This pochade makes the plan pop out more. You can see at a glance by having the walls pochade, meaning colored in, textured, toned. At a glance, you can see what's solid and what's space, right? If you draw your line work heavy enough and you have enough line work differentiation, you can kind of see between walls cut in plan section and walls which are just elevation texture walls, material walls, and the line weight of the dimension lines. By making the dimension lines lighter and the section lines heavier, you kind of see that. But pochade really emphasizes that, re-emphasizes that, makes it darker. Okay, so you can pochade. In pochade, you can either do it by a lot of these diagonal lines, close together, vary the spacing. You can't get too far apart, or you can't quite read it. You don't want it too close together, or it's like way too many lines. So you find a regular spacing. Sometimes it's a good idea to take like a graph paper page like this, right, and slide that underneath your sheet, right, at an angle, and then just trace every line at 1/8 of an inch. Would be a good grid spacing to make a regularly spaced pochade pattern, right? So you can draw pochade on your plan to make it pop out. We're drawing our little half size, or 3 inches equals a foot scale detail here on the sheet. We want to show also elevation and section reference markers, because later in this sheet 4, we're going to see elevations. We draw 2 elevations, so we want to say in plan what views we want to take. So when you look at a floor plan, you see these arrows, 1, 4, the arrow this way. That means you're standing there, looking in that direction, and on drawing 1 of sheet 4, you're going to see this elevation. The plan only shows the horizontal information, cut through the walls at about shoulder height, 3 or 4 feet, looking down, but you don't know about the height. You don't know what's going on in the vertical dimension. So it's the elevations that tell you what's happening in the vertical dimension. So the plan references the elevation. These are elevation reference markers. We're going to see an east elevation, and we're going to see a south elevation. Elevation reference marker 2 of 4 means on that drawing there's going to be another sheet, another drawing. And that's going to look like this. I'll give you like a quick preview of that. You turn to sheet 4, and boom, there's sheet 4. There's sheet 4, and elevation 1 on sheet 4, and elevation 2 on sheet 4. So now you get an idea of like what's happening in the vertical dimension, and it's referenced on the plan dimension, right? So we'll do that starting next week. We'll start that to measure all these pieces of information there. Okay, so that's the elevation reference markers, right? The section reference marker is this marker, which she actually didn't include at the time, but we will show that on ours, which is to be cut through a window or an opening somewhere in the wall, and instead of just stopping at the interior of the wall, we're cutting through the walls, showing the structure. Total. So you see the whole section, not just the elevation. Even though in the elevation, I'll go back to those sheets again. Elevation drawings, right? We are stopping our view at the profile of the room, right? the outside is kind of like a section line, right? But we're only focusing on the elevation within that section line, right? The next drawing, which is the section, sometimes they refer to it as a section elevation, becomes a section elevation that shows the structure, right? So now you get a sense of like what's in this interstitial space, the space between the floor and the ceiling, or the ceiling and the floor. Now in our case, we just showed it all pochade so you don't see anything, but all this space, this section, structural space represents the structural masonry of the exterior walls, the suspended ceiling, the ductwork that runs in between here, like all these outlets has ducts connected to them. So we're not showing any of that, but that's where all the engineering stuff takes place. So you see the thickness when you show a section. Most interior designers are really focusing on the elevation information, but it's very useful to know how much structural space you have, and that's where the section comes in. So that'll be the week after next that we'll start dealing with the section. Okay? But even this section gets a reference. This is drawing 1 on sheet 5. Sheet 5, classroom section. Sheet 4, classroom elevations, drawing 1 of sheet 4, drawing 2 of sheet 4.
No,
Okay. All right, and all that is referenced on the plan. The plan is like air traffic control, right? Everything happening in the drawing set kind of goes back to the plan. You see how big the room is. You have all the dimensions of all the room. You have the other views that you're going to see later, the elevation reference markers for the east elevation, for the south elevation, the section reference marker for the cut through the wall looking west, and also this detail reference marker indicating a blow-up detail of the construction of a wall element or any other element that's of interest in your particular room. Also, the plan, in addition to the configuration of the room, the dimensions of the room, overall dimensions, intermediate dimensions, we have symbols, right? And these symbols such as like, where is there a fire alarm station? There's a fire strobe, an annunciator to let you know when there's a fire condition. That occurs right here on this wall. Down below, there's an outlet. On this wall, there's another outlet. And on that wall, there's like a telephone outlet. So you show all the locations of data, security, telephone, power, all the stuff that's like in the room. And we just show them as symbols. Wherever we have a symbol, we indicate it on the plan, just symbolically, iconically. You don't draw like true. And we call a legend out to say wherever you see a symbol like that, a circle with 2 prongs in it, that's a duplex outlet. So that duplex outlet is here and here. Wherever you see a S with a line through it, it's almost like a dollar sign, it's like a light switch. So the light switches are over there. So you see next to the door 3 light switches, right? And it tells you on the plan where the light switches are. Here's a clock outlet, which is that outlet up there. The recessed outlet is usually where you mount a clock. That clock would be mounted over there with a plug that goes into it, but it's battery operated, that one, so they just put it on the wall. So there's no outlet at all involved with that. The clock outlets used to be recessed outlets that allow a clock to be battery powered, plugged in, and therefore it's recessed and hanging on the wall. But our clock is a, just Staples clock, double battery, yeah.
This kind of legend here refers to.
This note. Okay, so that legend is all for the graphic stuff. Sometimes you make notes on your floor plan that tell you about heights of things. So like where we have the windows, we made a note here where SH equals 2 feet 6 inches AFF, meaning the sill height of that window is 2 feet 6 inches above the finished floor. And then we also say that the head height of that window is whatever that is, 9 feet 4 inches above the finished floor, which means the head of the window, the top of the window, is like 9 feet above the finished floor. So you get a sense of how big that window is. Alternately, you could also say window height. I think she meant window height, because the height of that window is about 7 feet 4 inches. So you would write like a window height.
From the sill?
From the sill, yeah. If you have a window height, the height of the window is measured from the sill of the window.
Including the frame to the top of the...
Just the overall outside frame, just the outside frame. It gives you the window opening height, right?
Okay.
We'll get into all the details when you get into construction materials,
Okay.
but just to indicate generally the sill height of the window and the head height of the window, you make a note on the window opening. Just like over here, you can write your door against your door panel, 30 by 610, meaning that door is 3 feet wide by 6'10" high. So when you look at the plan, which normally only deals with horizontal dimensions, you can get some information about heights. You know? Alternate, you might also write here somewhere in the middle, CH, ceiling height equals whatever the ceiling height was, 10 feet 10 inches or something like that. And then you know, looking at it, all this is 10 feet height. But we'll get to that in the ceiling plan. Okay? So there are ways to show vertical information on the floor plan rather than having to go to the elevation in the ceiling plan. And that's just one of them. So that's pretty much how this sheet will be laid out. Okay? That's all the information you want to have. I also want you to just to remember, you know, the assignment sheet says to show the elevation and section reference markers, the elevation and section reference markers, and the detail call out. And it doesn't say to show the north arrow and the graphic scale, but you should remember to always show your north arrow and the graphic scale. And maybe we'll show the true north from the plan north as well, just to have that done. Okay? So that's everything we're doing for this sheet. Now I'm going to help you set it up, okay? Because you're going